great to see you all here, and it's great to be back. Here we are for the second year, which is just a huge testament to what's going on in the industry, and thank you so much. I'm going to embarrass Barry quickly. He very sweetly leaned over to me a moment ago and said, "Look at them, these are our people." And that's a lovely thing to think. So today I'm going to go through what's going on in the global market of branded residences. We're going to look at how the sector is evolving. We're going to look at some trends. We're going to look at some themes. There's going to be a lot of statistics up there, but I'll guide you through. They've all got a story behind them. So quick, shameless plug for GBR. We're a specialist consultancy firm working all around the world with developers and investors, brands and operators to help them to improve or perfect their branded residential business, whether that's market studies, product definition, brand selection and negotiation, advisory services directly to brands, and also transaction advisory as well. Do come and say hi. There's a number of the team here today. Okay, so some of these numbers may vary a little bit from what Jeff was showing, as he had a number of different sources, but we'll try to get through them relatively promptly. So 1,789 projects around the world, either open or in the pipeline. And that's made up of 784 completed and just over 1,000 in the pipeline, which is a statistic that never fails to amaze me, that year on year, this market is just looking to double in size over a forecast period of 5 to 6 years. So I wholeheartedly agree with Jeff when he said that this is the time. This is the most exciting time to be in branded residences. And that growth is here to be seen. So we're looking at 194% growth over the past 10 years, 80% just in the past 5 years, and a forecast growth of 120% over the next 5 to 6 years. Okay, so we're going to talk about regional distribution, and this for me is very interesting because for the first time in the history of the sector, North America is getting challenged. So let's have a look at that. So what we're going to see here, and you'll see a number of these types of graphs, we've got the completed projects, so that is what is existing right now in the market. We've got the pipeline of projects, which are the projects that have been signed and announced, but haven't necessarily been built or open yet. And then we've got the total projects, which pulls together those two data sets. So what we can see is that in the completed graph is that North America is in the lead at 34%. That's followed by Asia Pacific, and then you've got Europe, MENA, and CALA, all in and around the same level of mid-teens. When we look at the pipeline, however, what we can see is that there's a huge amount of growth in those secondary regions. So primarily CALA and Asia Pacific, as well as MENA. And what we see is this leveling of the playing field, which means that when we look into the future, if you like, we can see that North America has gone from 34% to 24%, and that MENA, CALA, and Asia Pacific are all growing in terms of MENA, CALA, and Europe are all growing in terms of their market share. So we're seeing a homogenization of the regions. It's no longer just the US or North America that has dominance in the sector. And that's really exciting because it means that we are spreading the word globally, that developers and investors are getting interested in the concept in many, many parts of the world. And we'll talk about why that's important when we get to the premiums. Okay, briefly, because Jeff did touch on some of these bits and pieces. So US, UAE in the top 2 positions, with Thailand coming in. But then we see, as we discussed, the pipeline in the UAE is absolutely formidable, primarily driven by Dubai, obviously. And that means that the UAE, while it still stays in second place, is starting to catch up on the US. Obviously, a much smaller market, geographically speaking, but the appetite for brands here is pretty unsurpassable. And what we'll see in this next slide is that the story is really about emerging markets. It's about the industry spreading to different parts of the world. So we've got Dubai, Miami, and New York in first, second, and third place globally. that stays the same through the pipeline and into the total projects. But then if we look at the pipeline graph in the middle, what you can see is lots of emerging destinations, places that don't have a huge supply of branded residences, which are now really embracing it. Okay, some of the top players: Marriott, Head & Shoulders leader at the moment and has been since 2002 from the Starwood merger. Accor very much chasing on the heels with, again, a formidable pipeline of projects coming through. Four Seasons coming in third place, and we'll see on the next graph that as a mono brand, it performs very well at a brand level, and it indeed performs very well at a parent brand level. And then we've got lots of familiar names in and around that: Hilton, IHG, Hyatt, Radisson, Kerzner, some of the mono brands with Mandarin Oriental and Rosewood down there in about 10th and 11th place. The non-hotel brands always tends to be relatively controversial, a subject, but you can't deny the fact that they are stealing a march on the industry. They are being increasingly engaged, especially in places like Dubai and Miami. We have You at the top of that tree with their 4, 5, 6 sub-brands with various interior designers. Pininfarina showing just an amazing pipeline, bearing in mind the number of completed projects. And then interestingly, the opposite for the Trump Organization, which was the biggest player in the sector in the year 2000. But today we can see that their pipeline compared to their completed is significantly down. And then we have a whole plethora of different industries in that non-hotel brand, from automotive, fashion, design, sports, food and beverage. And they just keep coming. Every year we see new brands coming into the sector and making an impact. So just quickly, this is at brand level rather than parent brand level. And you can see Four Seasons and Ritz-Carlton up there at the top. Ritz-Carlton and Four Seasons do this little dance every year of alternating backwards and forwards who's in the top position. But those two have really been leading the industry in terms of individual brands. Okay, let's look at some of the trends. Conscious of time. So in terms of chain scale variation, whether it's luxury, mid-scale, upper upscale, etc., we can see that it is a luxury game. It's pretty much going to stay a luxury game for the foreseeable future. We do see, a small amount of growth in some of the other chain scales, but really it is still very much a luxury sector. Okay, development context. Not a great deal to say about that in terms of urban resort and resort. There is clearly a propensity towards urban projects in its origin, but resorts and urban resorts, Dubai would be considered an urban resort, for example, still make up a really important part of the market landscape. Now, integrated, co-located, standalone. So these are the three principal typologies, if you like, of branded residences. And Jeff, very importantly, mentioned the concept or the propensity of standalone developments. And we'll see, I'm going to show you a slide about Dubai in a moment. But what you can see is that whilst in terms of completed and pipeline, co-located and integrated are actually going down a little bit, and standalone is going up. So when we look at the total, we can see that standalone is now only 5% behind the market leader in co-located developments. So I've affirmed it before and I'll affirm it again. You cannot ignore standalone developments. They will be the future of the sector. We can see they're only 5% behind at the moment. And when we look at the pipeline, we can see that they're making up an equal amount of the stock coming through. Okay, quickly on premiums. Got urban premiums at the tightest at 24%. That's because there's lots of sophisticated comparables to compare them to that have concierge, valet, amenities, and so on. So that premium is still squeezed, but it's at 24%, which is fantastic given the first time that we studied this in 2018. The global average was 27, 28%. So we can see that the urban average, which has always been the smallest one, is increasing as well. Urban resort at 41%, resort at 68%. And resorts get higher premiums because they tend to be in more isolated market context. There isn't another fantastic unbranded resort right next door to compare to. So you tend to see very high performance in the comparison. If we put that all together, globally speaking, we're looking at an unadjusted or non-adjusted average of 43%. But then what we do is we take out the outliers, because there are some brand premiums which are over 200%, and there are some brand premiums which are lower than minus 25%. So we clear the outliers to an adjusted average at 37%. So I often get asked, why is that going up over time? And I think some people believe that it's maybe increased value from the sector or new and innovative brands. But actually, having studied the sector quite extensively, I think the real driver for that premium going up is about geographical distribution. It's about the fact that we're seeing branded residences in locations that haven't seen branded residences before, and the quality of the competing non-branded stock is generally quite unsophisticated. So you see these very, very strong premiums coming up, which translate into the global average. Oop. Okay, sorry about that. So very, very brief snapshot on Dubai, which is also seeing a huge growth. So we have 165 completed in pipeline, made up of 60 versus 105 in the pipeline. So enormous growth to come through in Dubai. Looking at brand types, it's relatively consistent between hotel and non-hotel, albeit that is at a higher percentage compared to the globe, which would be about 80% for hoteliers, and here it's 66%. And then the non-hoteliers are made up by a range of different industries, but primarily fashion and design. See much greater growth compared to global. This is, at the end of the day, the sort of unofficial petri dish of the global branded sector. So we're seeing just a really accelerated level of growth with a forecast of 172% in the next 5 to 6 years. Parent brands, we've got Emaar and Accor up in the top two, with Jumeirah and Minor following. But what we can see is that Marriott has a really formidable pipeline in Dubai, which is going to see it come up to third place in terms of total projects when we look forward. So a bit of a shift change there with Marriott coming up. Top brands, we've got some of the, let's say, more local brands like Address and Vida, Jumeirah and Rove. Dorchester Collection has done very well in Dubai, and again has a great pipeline coming through. So we see some change in terms of the individual brands looking into the future. For non-hotel brands, it's driven by Degrazonio, with Roberto Cavalli, again having a strong pipeline going from third place into second place. Okay, we're almost there. Chain scale variance, again, not a great deal to report as such, in the sense that it is still a luxury game, but in Dubai, looking into the pipeline, is even more luxury. So it's a higher percentage compared to global, and in Dubai in particular, luxury is the dominant chain scale. Okay, final one, looking at standalone. So this is what I alluded to earlier. So if we look at standalone developments in green, we can see that at the moment we're at 34%, but when we look into the pipeline, 79% of the pipeline is going to be standalone. Which means that when we look into the future, again, standalone becomes the dominant typology in Dubai. And if Dubai sits as a petri dish, as an example, as a test tube for the industry, then I would expect over the course of the years to see a similar dynamic going on globally. Thank you very much. Thanks for listening, and I will see you later on in the day. Do come and say hello.